Hello, everybody. Whether you're watching live or will be watching live or watching this 2 days from now. Let me get a little organized here. Okay. You know, there's a bunch. I haven't streamed in a while. And there are a bunch of new weird features here in StreamYard I kind of want to play with. Let's look at them together. Let's see here. No, I don't like that. No. Okay. I think I like bubble best. What else we got here? We got an over. I don't want to screw around with overlays. Leave background. That's probably. I don't think I want to do that. It's not doing anything. It's probably if I'm Oh, I bet. Oh, wait. I bet that's if. Well, I'm not going to be able to do it right now. It probably is. So if you have a black background, they also have background music. I bet they're just bangers, every single one. Let's see here. Spa music. A little spa music. Or like yoga studio music. I mean, it's a little sleepy. It's a little sleepy for a video. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's bad in this context. All right, let's look at, this is, by the way, acoustic cinematic. Let's do dance pop. Get ready. Get out your glow stick. Ugh, I'm already aggravated. All right, that's enough of that horse shit. Let's look at daydreaming. Daydreaming? Oh, okay, that's enough of that. Let's hear it. Feeding the ducks? No guesses. There's nothing about this that makes me think of ducks and or feeding them. This is Into Space. These are bad, right? They're bad. The next one is lo-fi. Oh, we're doing that. We're doing that. No, okay. Night driving. We only got one more after this. Bear with me. Inoffensive, still kind of boring. Also, again, what is the application for this? When would I be playing this? Can you imagine? Next time I have Jim on, while he's talking, I'm just going to turn things on. Okay, finally, rock. I will bet you $1,000 this is not going to be like any rock you've ever heard. Okay, let's try. Okay. I might have lost $1,000 there. That's actually, I mean, unlike feeding the ducks, that actually sounds okay. Sure. All right. Again, I don't know what I would do with any of those, but all right. We've tried all the new features. Let's check the comments. Dee, long time no see. How are you doing? Let's see here. Scott, cool. Let's add some. I do. Reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Let's see here. You can upload your own music. Oh. But I imagine if it's like you could probably also get yourself a copyright strike for that too, I'm assuming. Yes, I am checking the chat now. Okay. Yeah, this is a good reference, by the way. Scott's been doing, if you're not following his channel, you should be. He's been doing his recreations of retro products or products inspired by retro products or what have you. He did some underoos for R-rated movies from that era. It's fantastic. Very, very good. I encourage you all to check it out. All right. Let's see here. I'm back. Yes, videos are going again. So, what should I start with? Should I start with DvsM updates or should I start with just life updates? What's been going on in the meantime? Why don't we do that first because that will be faster. Since the last time we were streaming, the royal we, last time I was streaming, so wait, let's recap. DvsM 1979 came out, sold some copies, it was all good. Then I decided to just take a break from streaming while I was regathering my strength and thinking about the next DvsM number 4, which I mostly, not to skip ahead a little bit, mostly have just been thinking through and writing and noodling with ever since. What else have I done in the meantime? Went to Arizona Comic Book Arts Festival. You probably saw me talk about that on other channels if you follow this sort of indie community I'm in. There were holidays. I don't know. Like, what else is there to say? I did lose some time writing. Now we're just going to segue, I guess, right into... Oh, there is one other thing just because it's in my field of view. I've developed a little bit of a problem. Hi, my name is Gary, and I'm getting addicted to Super 7 G.I. Joe Ultimates figures. It's a bad, expensive thing that I've just started to spiral into. Let me show you one as an example. So these are 6 or 7 inch figures. I haven't measured them, based on the original G.I. Joe cartoon that I loved and grew up with. Didn't love as much as the G.I. Joe comic, the Marvel RAH G.I. Joe comic, but still loved it a lot. And for example, we got Zartan here. And yes, he changes color in the sun for the people who are in the know. These are not cheap. Nothing from Super 7 is cheap. There's, I don't know how many total, but I've gotten a fair portion of them. It's a problem. And I've demonstrated that I don't have any self-control when it comes to this shit. And so I'm asking right now publicly that Super 7 stops making them. Just don't make any new ones. Just stop. Please stop. As much as I would love a Tomax and a Zaymot and a Serpentor, and maybe Snake Eyes in his V2 costume, the one with the visor. Maybe a Firefly as well. But after that, no more. No more. Oh, and if you do Serpentor, do his weirdo Cobra hover chariot thing too. All right, that's it. No more. The world doesn't need them. Okay. Let's see here. I'm checking up on the chat. If you're doing drawing and not allowed to music, be okay. Yeah. Yeah. The trick is finding, I'm curious how protected music works. I'm sure it probably gets a strike. So then, unless I'm making my own or using their weird stuff, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, it'd be strange. Chase, good to see you. Okay. So, DvsM. As I mentioned, I've been writing DvsM number 4. I've taken much more time writing this one than any of the previous DvsMs. DvsM number 1, 1975, DvsM number 2, 1997, and DvsM number 3, 1979. This one, the fourth one, is, if you've followed any of my little reporting so far, is DvsM 2001. We're going to talk about 2001 as much as I can without getting spoilery in a little bit. But I probably started writing it. It's a good question, actually. I know it was last year. As you may remember, while I'm very, very strict about my timeline when it comes to drawing, I am extremely laissez-faire about timelines when it comes to writing a script. It's just, it's done when it's done. And I don't hold myself to, oh, I'm going to try and get it done by this date. Or of course I have, I might have aspirational goals. Like I'd like to be done by this time. I would like to be doing revisions by this time, whatever. I would like to start drawing by this time, but I'm not going to hold myself to that. I think the writing is really important to get right. And so I'll just take all the time I need before. Not only do I think the story is ready, that I think I've got something and it's good and it doesn't need any more screwing around with, but it's good enough and I'm excited enough about it that I am now willing to spend maybe a year drawing it. I mean, that really is the biggest hurdle, is getting it to a point where I'm willing to put in that kind of time, where I'm willing to make that kind of commitment. I really need to feel like, yes, this is it. This is cool. I feel good about this. This is the story I want out there. This is a worthy chapter in this vision I have for the 6 books. And yeah, they take a long time to draw. So the writing is done when I feel like, okay, I'm willing to do this now. I am not willing to do that right now. So here's where we are with DvsM number 4, DvsM 2001. And by the way, yes, I have thought about the fact that it's 2001 and there's a movie 2001, whatever, it did give me a little bit of pause, and people will understand this when they read the story. Maybe I'll even get into it today. It's not major spoiler stuff. The idea I had for this book going way back, and that's the other thing to talk about, is that all 6 DvsMs I had a sketched outline for before I even started drawing 1975. I knew where I was going. I may not have all the specifics. I may not have dialed in characters, but I at least know it's about this. It's this kind of a story about this sort of a character. So, and, going from there. There's a reason it's 2001. It kind of has to be 2001. Does it matter that there's a movie out there, a classic movie out there named 2001? I don't know. Probably not. But it has occurred to me, and people have brought it up to me. Yes, duly noted, disregarding. So anyway, yes, I'm spending way more time writing it. It is not a function of whether it's going well or not. I think it's been going very well. I've been really actually enjoying the writing process of this one. I'm fact-checking myself before I commit to saying this. I think this is true, more than any of the other ones I've written. That doesn't mean it's been easy. That doesn't mean it's gone smoothly, because writing is a cluster, and we'll talk about that too. But I'm happy with the work. The reason it's been taking longer, yeah, well, there's two reasons. One, I've been just distracted with other life things. For example, I had a hernia repair surgery about a month ago. And so building up to that, I was sort of distracted anticipating it, and then I did it, and I was sort of recovering. I didn't feel like sitting at my desk and typing and stuff. So I lost maybe a few weeks to writing there. Did Arizona Comic Arts Festival. That is like distracts me. I get into con mode. There have been just things like that. I did a bunch of freelancing, graphic design. I don't do a lot of freelancing. I can't explain this. But even though I don't love freelancing, I feel like it's good for me. Like, I make myself do it every once in a while. Maybe once or twice a year, some project comes along, and even though I'm not dying to do it and it's not going to be, life-changing money, I just do it because I feel like I should. And I've never dug into that. I don't know why I feel that way. May not even be, maybe I should, like, maybe I don't need to do that, but I don't know. Gigs come along, and every once in a while I feel like I just need to do the exercise of taking it on and doing it. So anyway, I did some beer labels for a local brewery. Once I get my bottles, I'll maybe share them in a future stream. I've just been doing things, like never just writing all the time, my only thing I'm doing. And I was also taking a break. I finished DvsM 1979. Every one of these comics takes a little bit out of me. It's just because it's work, nose to the grindstone for sometimes a year or more. And I think it's important to recharge a little bit in between. Anyway, skipping all over the place. I didn't have a script for this, in case you didn't already notice. I've been working on this script. For every DvsM I do, I set a new challenge for myself. I set some sort of area that I think either I could improve at, or I want to stretch myself with, or I want to skill build by attempting, or whatever. For 75, my first one, it was very simply like, I want to finish a project. That was the goal for myself. That was the big challenge. Was I've never followed through on an ambitious project that takes any amount of time. So 75, the goal was simply do it. Okay. 97, the second one, I wanted to do some more ambitious character work. And 97 is a very character-focused book. And it's also two female characters, which if you go back and watch my 97 videos, I felt that's a challenge. I was just talking to someone about it recently. At least for me, nothing's worse than reading a male writer poorly write a female character. It's cringy, it's weird, it's insufferable, and I just wanted to be able to write some real human female characters. So that was my goal for 97. 79, the last one, previous one, I wanted to really push the drawing within my page a week constraint. I wanted to level that up and make it look better than any of the DvsM previous. And I wanted to really depict in an interesting or hopefully emotional, moving way the relationship between a human and an animal. Like, I thought that was an interesting challenge. This one, the challenge I set for myself so far, there's two. One I'm navigating right now in the writing, the other will come in the drawing. I wanted to do it sounds very simplistic, but I wanted to do the writing right this time. I didn't, not that I've ever phoned in a script. I never have. I always work very hard on the DvsM scripts. But this time I wanted to really sink into it. I didn't want to try and crank out a script in 6 weeks and move on. I really wanted to sit and have almost classical writing, creative writing experience. I wanted to sit and outline. I wanted to really think the characters through. I wanted to think about how they relate to each other. I wanted to think about what they represent. I wanted to think about, what am I trying to say? Not what I think I'm trying to say, but now let's go through it and read it and say, like, okay, but this is actually what I'm saying, and zero in on what's actually coming out, what is apparently important to me, and polish and narrow and sharpen. And I wanted just to do all the steps. I wanted to write it as if I was writing a novel. I wanted to take it very, very seriously. Something I haven't talked about in a while, but I've always just thought it's a little bit of a hot take. I do think sometimes, now everyone don't get triggered, but I do think sometimes, especially when it comes to comic creators, especially indie creators, maybe this is unfair, but I perceive an element of giving themselves permission to not work very hard because it's only a comic, or they're only indie, or whatever the thing is. You know, I think they hold back, or they give themselves permission to not, you know, kill themselves with trying to make a great thing. And you know, this sounds like this is very self-congratulatory, and I apologize, but I've never done that. I've never looked at the DvsMs and it's like, it's just a dumb comic. I've always tried to put a lot into them. And I wanted this time to really do that with the writing. I wanted to, it's like, I want to tell a real story here with real characters and try to say something interesting. So on that note, as I've announced, each DvsM focuses on a particular character. First one was on a man in black. I see the chat going, and I'm going to check on it in a second, but I got to get through my stream of consciousness here. First one was a man in black. Second one was the eyewitness, or the innocent bystander. Third one was a scientist. The fourth one, the one I'm working now, is focusing on a soldier. Another reason the script has taken a while is I've done a lot more research. I've done more research for this one than any of them so far. Partly because there's a lot of material out there if you want to read about and try to understand a soldier's life, a soldier's experience. But also because when it comes to movies or comics or books or whatever, the soldier experience is well trodden, and there are a lot of tropes, and there are a lot of stories that are being told over and over and over again. And my ambition and responsibility, I think, as a writer, is to find some kind of a fresh take, a new spin on it, show you something that you haven't seen a dozen times before. Now, it took a little doing, but I don't think that's, we'll see. I don't think that's as hard as it maybe sounds, because in my estimation, a lot, when you look at soldier stories, soldier fiction, I think a lot of it is still very informed by Vietnam. I think a lot of it is still more or less, in one way or another, the story of the draftee, the idealistic draftee or something, being enlisted into this experience and being introduced to the horrors of war and how that changes them and grows them up and damages them and whatever. There's this this kind of to me, a victimhood in a lot of soldier stories that, in my modest opinion, is a little dated, since it's a volunteer army now and there's no draft. I think those stories made sense in the post-Vietnam, immediately post-Vietnam era. I think right now that I don't know who they're speaking to. They're talking about my dad. They're not talking about soldiers today. So I think that's one area where it's like, okay, well, as long as you steer away from those rocks, you know, you're probably going into new territory. That said, I think there is a lot of dramatic interest in the soldier experience, and especially the experience of having once been a soldier and now not being a soldier. So I don't want to get into what DvsM 2001 is about, like because I've just never been that guy with any of my stories, but I think I have something. I think I have, this is a fresh take that's very honest and it's very real and it's very true to a lot of military people's experience, but that I don't see talked about much, or if at all, in movies and shows and books and things like that. So, you know, I have my angle, but it took some time to find it. It took some time. It's like, that's the area of interest that not only is interesting to me, that I think I can tell a story around, but also fits into the larger story I'm trying to tell using these examples. Okay. The other thing that's going to be a challenge and a test for me going forward, both now in the writing and then later in the drawing, is going to be, there are a lot more characters in this one that there's ever been in a DvsM. It's a team of 6 men, a team of 6 soldiers, and trying to decide, like, even in the most difficult writing I've ever had to do for DvsM, there's never more than maybe like 3 people who are real active characters in the story. Okay. Now you have 6, and you've got to really, even if they're not a main character, even if you know they're only kind of going to be on the edge, the periphery for a little while and don't have a ton to do, you still have to think them through as much as you do your main characters. And that takes a, you know, I mean, do the math. Normally I'm dealing with 2 or 3 fully fleshed out characters. Now I'm dealing with 6. That's 2 to 3 times as much work. So not only is the writing challenging, the drawing is going to be a pain in the ass in a new way, because I have a bunch of guys. Just like, I got to figure out what they're all doing. I can't be forgetting about anybody. I need to give them all interesting things to look at and do in each panel. I mean, of course, you're not going to have all 6 in every panel, but now we're dealing with an ensemble, and I got to figure that out, both the writing and the drawing of it. The last challenge I've set for myself with this one is set almost entirely, with a few little exceptions, outdoors. So it'll be a lot more nature drawing. It's set in a forest, in the mountains. There'll be a lot of trees, a lot of rocks, a lot of natural terrain. That's another thing. Most of the DvsMs, they take place indoors. And that's the challenge I'm least worried about, but it's going to be new. The thing that I'm mostly worried about is that aspect. And it's something that I experimented a bit with in DvsM 1979, is low light environments. There are big scenes in this one where it's nighttime in the woods. And trying to decide how I'm going to do that in black and white and make it interesting to look at and not cheat it, but also I'm maintaining some continuity, and you get a sense of space, you get a sense of where you are in campsites and forts. It's just going to be a lot of new visual challenges. Okay, before I move on, I'm going to check up on the chat. Let's see here. Let's see here. Process live streams are just what the doctor prescribed. Benina. Yeah, you know, I feel like I'm calling out all my fellow creatives. I'm feeling a lack of our indie community live streaming. I feel like there were periods in the past where anytime I went onto YouTube, somebody was streaming and I could have it on when I was working. Now, I haven't been doing that as much because I can't listen to a live stream when I'm writing. But once I get into the thumbnailing stage and then especially the drawing stage, I'm going to need you all to step up because I need stuff to have on in the background. Okay, that's my prescription to you guys. Okay, interesting. I'll take a look at that. Will the script for this DvsM be longer than any other installments? Oh, wow. It's like you saw my little notes to myself. Thank you for going in this direction. Or will it be fairly similar in terms of length to the previous books? Okay, so I don't know how long DvsM 2001 will be yet. I know how long my draft is. So let's talk about the draft before we get into the length of it. It's a finished draft. It's one I would never, ever, ever show to anybody. It's a garbage version. I've shown snippets to people. I've mostly to Jim, like I'll pull out little parts that I think he might enjoy and throw it in our chat on Facebook. But I would never let anyone read it right now because it's garbage. What it is right now is every idea I have for this story in there. It is colossally overstuffed. It is so much longer than I know it's going to be. Just because I don't know what ideas I do and don't ultimately want in there. So I just put everything in, every random idea, every idea of a character says this or this happens or whatever. It's all in there, okay? Now, and I just basically very recently, I was like, okay, that's it. Now we're moving to, or I'm going to be moving to probably today, revision and editing. Where I will be going through, first I got to read it beginning to end, this enormously wrong garbage draft I would never show anybody, and try and feel like, okay, where is the through line? What is serving the story? This is what I know I'm trying to say. Going part by part, does this serve that? Does this serve that? Does this serve that? And if it doesn't, at least initially, probably highlighting and making the text a different color as it's likely going to be cut. That all said, now with that all disclaimer, just to illustrate it, right now the DvsM 2001 script is 39 pages or 10,200 words. For reference, DvsM 1975, that script, The Two Men in Black and the House, 17 pages. It's really skinny. There's like, because it's mostly just watching things happen. You have the beginning where there's a lot of dialogue, but then it's a lot of just sequence of events once you get to the house. 97 with Jenny, the eyewitness, that script was 37 pages. 1979 with Dr. Wagner and Opie, 22 pages. Now, I think I've talked about this before in a past video, but we're going to go over it again. DvsM 1975, script was 17 pages. Comic was 40. Okay, so you think like, okay, so the comic's going to be about twice as long as the script, right? Well, not so fast. 97, the script was 37 pages. The comic was 59. Well, it doesn't exactly work the same way. And then to really blow it up, the script for 79 was 22 pages. The comic itself was like 61. Okay. There is no relationship between script length and comic length. None that I've been able to figure out. I've tried. I was like, well, maybe if it's dialogue, it's this number. And if it's just describing action, it's this. I won't know how long the book is until I thumbnail it. And that's when I'll be able to get a ballpark because I know my average number of panels per page. So I know if I have, whatever, 200 panels or something, I can do the math and figure out it will probably be about this long. I won't know exactly how it's long until I do the page planning. The point is, right now the script is 39 pages. It's entirely too long. even as I was writing it, I knew like this probably is not even going to survive the first revision. I'd be writing things knowing like I'm going to put it in here just in case. It's probably going to get cut. I don't know for sure. I suspect 25% of this will get cut in revisions. So I'll end up with maybe a 30-page script. Maybe. I don't know, but we'll see. That's probably a minimum. I could end up with half of what I have. Because like I said, it's going to be chopping. And I really did, I'm not going to hold myself to this, but I really did imagine this one as being a fairly straightforward story. And I've said that almost every time, and I'm always wrong, but we'll see. But even if I get this script down to 20, 25 pages, I still don't know how long that will be until I start thumbnailing. I just by the way this story is being told, I'm so reluctant to say this, but whatever. I would think it shouldn't be as long as 79 or 97. That it will probably, this is so dumb. I'm going on record right now. It's so dumb to predict because I've been wrong every time how long these books are. But I'm suspecting, just based on the story I think I want to tell and how that would play out, 40 or 50 pages. So about as long as 75 or a little longer, but not as long as 97 and 79. We will circle back to that in a few months because I'll know then. Looking ahead a little bit before I talk a little bit about what 2001 is about. While I don't kill myself hitting writing goals and deadlines, there is, I'm going to center this a little bit so I'm not looking off to the side so much. Looking at this, that's a little better. I do have some basic goalposts I don't have to hit, but it's going to make my life difficult if I don't. So for example, there's going to be a art retreat in early August, which, by the way, Scott, if you're still watching, I'm going to look at plane tickets today and try and figure out when we might fly out. We are going to be going to California to meet up with a few of the other creatives, the Making Comics guys, Josh Campbell, Jim Lujan, like a few different people, to just do a little 2-night art retreat in Keith Foster's little home away from home. Very excited to meet up with the guys, very excited to have that sort of energy of just a bunch of creatives bringing their project in whatever state it's in and messing with it. My intention is 2 of the people who are going to be there are people I want to use for model references for characters in this book. And they're California people, so they're people I don't have easy access to. So I have a lot of incentive to have my thumbnails done for this book by August 2nd. Because I need the thumbnails to know what kind of pictures I need. So then I'll have these 2 as captive audience, and I can take pictures of them for an hour each or whatever it'll end up being. And, I'll know what I need. So that sets up okay, so let's do, what is this? This is April 28th. Basically May 2nd, May, June, July. I've got 3 months to get my shit together. I have a draft that now I should just be revising and editing. Let's say I make a revision and edit pass on this script. I probably could do one once a week for the next couple months, but let's ease off the gas a little bit. Let's say every 2 weeks I try to get a new draft out, a new revision out. I can still get a few revisions in if I let's say I take 2 months for revisions and then allow myself a month to thumbnail out the script. That seems very achievable. That seems very doable, barring any kind of weird life thing that pulls me away from it, I should be able to do that. And with the August 2 date, like I have a lot of incentive, because if I'm not ready to do that, if I'm still working on revisions on August 2nd, or I have not finished my thumbnails August 2nd, Art Retreat will still be great. I can use it for writing and editing, or I can use it for thumbnailing. But now I've missed my window to get both these guys in one fell swoop to sit for photos. Now I've got to plan another trip to California, maybe 2 trips to California, because one of the people I would like to use as a reference, Scott Lost, is in San Diego. Josh is another one I want to use. He's in LA area. Like it just becomes a thing where now I have a lot of legwork to do to try and get these guys. So August 2nd. I'm going to look at the chat now. Let's see here. I'm in Ojai today. Just wanted to say congratulations. Questions for the day. When does the thumbnailing begin? I anticipate it. We're so in the same place. We're vibing with each other. Yeah, I would hope, I don't know, I would hope first week of July at latest. Thumbnailing doesn't take too long if I'm diligent about it, but it's work. It takes time, and usually thumbnails, in my experience, there is a little overlap between thumbnailing and revisions, because sometimes you start thumbnailing stuff out and you realize that it just, for whatever reason, doesn't work visually, whatever you wrote, or it's going too long. Like you wrote something that you imagine should be like a page or 2, and you're thumbnailing it out, and you're ending up with a lot of panels, and you're realizing, oh, this, I got to figure out a way to tighten this up. So then you circle back to the script and you massage it so it'll translate better to comic. Remember, I write my scripts like screenplays. I'm not doing the, sometimes you see these worksheets where you're basically writing per panel, and that's not how I write a script. I write a script like it's a screenplay. I write a script like it's going to be a movie, and a comic isn't a movie. So when you start thumbnailing it, that's sometimes where it exposes not problems with your script, but basically there needs to be a translation to comic in what you wrote that you didn't anticipate. So you circle back and you tweak it, and then you try to thumbnail it again. I think that happened with 79 especially. I have a pretty clear memory of starting to thumbnail it out and realizing that I had an enormous number of panels, and I was only halfway through the book. That I was just realizing, like, this is entirely too long for what I'm trying to do. I expected to be to this point in the story by this many pages into the comic, and I'm not even close, and that doesn't work for me. So let's see here. I appreciate that, Dee Dee. Thank you. Let's see. Talk to soldiers from different eras. Yeah, it's a completely different story. They're completely unique stories, and again, not applicable to, first, the kind of soldier story I want to tell, and second, a contemporary soldier story. There's also an important difference, and this is something that I had a lot of notes on in my research. I don't know if there's really room for it into the script. I don't think I even made it in this overstuffed draft. Like I felt like there's just not a good place to put it in. But there is a distinct difference when you're talking about the contemporary soldier story between, let me restart. There's not only a difference between the contemporary soldier and, for example, the Vietnam soldier, or the World War II or Korean War soldier. Like those are all unique stories. Not only is there a difference between that and that, there's a difference between the soldier that enlisted to get money to go to college, or because he had nothing to do in his shitty small town, and he's like a base soldier. He's like, working on trucks, or he's, deployed somewhere, and he's mostly just hanging out. And special ops, which are the sorts of people that my story is about. I mean, these are elite professional people who spend, and this is something that I think is relatable to creatives, all they do when they're not out doing something is just chase perfection. They're practicing with their weapons, they're exercising, they're studying, they are specialists, they are professionals. Their profession is combat, war, and they are, it's like any other kind of specialist. It's like someone in the NBA. It's like someone who's a classical musician. It's like someone who's a brain surgeon. Like, their life is about being excellent at this thing. That is vastly different from, again, the first version I described, which is someone who was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and my parents want me out of the house, and I don't want to work at McDonald's, so I enlisted. Those are two different animals, completely two different animals. And in my experience, it seems like when it comes to movies and comics and books, for whatever reason, I think people are very interested in the stories about someone who just signed up and didn't quite know what they were getting into. I don't know why that's the interesting story. I mean, it is an interesting story, but I don't know why that's the exclusively interesting story in pop culture, but in fiction and entertainment. And when you do see, SEAL Team 6 types in movies, generally, you're not really getting into the mindset and the lifestyle and the characters. It's mostly just to watch them do badass things. It's like a Call of Duty cutscene. It's Black Hawk Down a little bit, elements of Zero Dark 30 a little bit, kind of treated these people like real people, which I guess, now that I think of it, if there's any one consistent theme all through the characters of DvsM, it's like, treat these people like real people. Treat a man in black as if he was a real, like there was such a thing and this is how they would probably be. Treat Jenny like a real woman, not a comic woman, like a real female human being. Treat Dr. Wagner like what it would be like to be a civilian in this bizarre situation working for the government, and in this case, like, what's it like to have that life, and not just like a very good, honest exploration of that and those dynamics and the unique lifestyle, and like, I want to get into that, and that's something I think is underexplored. Again, I'm not going to get into specifically like what's the big idea I'm kind of chasing with this main character in this story, but I don't see it in entertainment. I see it in books about that, books about soldiers, but I don't see it in entertainment. And I thought, well, this is an opportunity to do something a little fresh. Let's see here. I have a plan. Thank you, Didi. It's one of the main ambitions of what I try to do with every single one, is like make these people seem like real people. Okay. What else? Talked about the script in its current state. Talked about that it's way too long. I will, in terms of, at some point, I will bring in people to proofread. Now, proofread is so funny. That makes it sound like it's looking for typos and things. To read and give a reaction. But that's, I mean, at least a month away. Probably that might be when I'm doing the thumbnail phase. Like I'll share it with, I'll decide who, and I never blanket the earth with scripts. I've always, this is something I've talked about in past videos, I think you need to be very, very thoughtful about who you're showing your work to. I cringe every time I see it's always some kid on Facebook or something sharing their work and inviting feedback from strangers. Like, what is the point of this? I don't see any value in that at all, and I see actually a lot of downsides, a lot of hazards. I'm very, very careful about who I share my work with. And I'm mostly trying to think about who is going to help me get where I'm going. Editing is an art form. And when I say editing, I mean being an editor. It's something that not everyone understands the assignment with. And I can say that from having worked as a freelance writer. There are broadly two kinds of editors in the world. And one is not even worth your time, and one is exactly what you want. The one that is not even worth your time is the one that's going to read something and tell you how they would write it. I'm rewriting this sentence to something that sounds better to me. Or this wasn't as exciting to me. Maybe you could put this in. Like, they're trying to get you to write a story that they like, or they're trying to get you to write the story that they would write. Okay, that's a waste of time. That's most people's default mode, though. If you show the average person something, whether it's painting or drawing or a poem you wrote or a novel manuscript or whatever it is, a screenplay, they don't know any other way than to just say, this is how I would do it. And that's generally not very useful. The best kind of editor is someone who understands what you're trying to do and helps you get there. Okay? They see, this is the idea you're talking about. It would be more clear if you did this or this or this. Or I think you muddied the waters here and I lost track of the idea. Or I see that this character, you're trying to have them be this person, like this kind of person, and I don't think it's consistent. Whatever. Like, they're helping you. Like, they see, like, I see where you're going. I see what you're trying to do. I see the artistic vision. I see the ambition. Let me help. Like, these are the areas where I feel like it's kind of not the ideal line to it, so you'll hit the target a little bit harder. That's who you want. And I think that's why, for example, like going back to 97, when I was writing female characters, I wanted all the people reading the script and giving me notes to be women. Like, because that was my biggest concern about it. I'm a guy writing women. I'm not a woman. I need, like, am I doing anything stupid here that just is like, I don't think a woman would say that, or that's not how a woman would say it, or that doesn't seem like a real female experience, or whatever. Like, that's why all the editors were women. With this one, I don't know. Ideally, I would like to find some vets. I know at least one who I'll probably ask to read it over. But other than people whose just creative input I respect, and I know that they at least have a sense of what I'm doing with DvsM, I'll probably steer toward wherever I am insecure about the story, wherever I think I'm not 100% confident. I'll probably try to find an editor that I think will be sensitive to that and alert me to mistakes I'm making, if that makes sense. Okay, let's see here. The comic, I would think the drawing is as important to review. Yeah, though it's funny. I do tend to, like, I usually at least show Mary pages as they're finished. I am not a work in progress guy. It's the same thing with this channel. You're never going to see a half-finished panel in any of my videos. Absolutely not. I really feel strongly about that. That could almost be a video for some future stream where I don't know what to talk about. People who show their work before it's done, to me, it's just crazy. I don't know what they're doing. You're trusting people, especially sometimes non-artists, to complete your thought, to know where you're going. And who knows where you're going other than you? I've never liked that idea. It's now, if you have a finished page, maybe the whole book isn't done, but you have a finished page, yeah, you could share that. Or if you're like Jim and you have a pretty much a finished scene, like I've animated this, it's done, the voices are in, and you want to share that, awesome. That makes perfect sense. But the idea of like what I would be not, Jim doesn't need my help. Jim's a genius. I love Jim. But like if, for example, Jim was sharing weird animatics of full fungus with no voice in yet, and you're just watching like these sketched out characters kind of move around, and he's talking, he's like, so what's going to be in here? There's going to be some music, and then this character is going to say this. I would really be like, what are you doing? Why are you letting people imagine? Like, show the anyway, I'm not going to get derailed more than I already did. Anyway, but I know, look, I know I'm a minority here. I know lots of people love to do live draws and live, like they just stream the whole process. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just cannot. I'm so different in that regard. Anyway, reviewing drawings. Finished pages I usually do at least pass to Mary, my girlfriend. Once in a while, I'll share a finished panel or a finished page with some other creative. For good or ill, I wouldn't say I trust my visual work more than my writing. I don't think it's that. It's in my experience, I've never had to think about this, and I'm not sure what the difference is. Writing to me is, it's communicating it's explaining a thought, it's explaining an idea, it's trying to generate an emotion or a feeling or an impression or whatever. And it's just like any other kind of language. It connects, or like you're getting the message across or you're not. There is something pass-fail about that. There is something a little more objective, I think, not overwhelmingly, but a little more objective about evaluating writing. Does this make sense is a very easy bar. Like I think that's not a subjective, I mean, unless you're David Lynch or somebody, that's not a subjective goal. Like, it doesn't have to make sense to you. It doesn't have to make any sense at all. I mean, I'm not writing that kind of thing. I'm not trying to lose my audience. I'm trying to get the message across, even if it's subtly, even if it's a little fuzzily. Like I am trying to communicate. So if it's not doing that, I need to know. I need feedback. I know what my thought is. I know what I think I'm doing, but I can't remove myself from this enough to see it from the outside. In my experience, when I think of all the feedback on the art I've gotten for all the DvsMs, I can think of one example, one out of 3 books and years of doing this, that was good, like helpful. Oh, thank you. I'll keep that in mind in the future because you're right. That could have been improved. Every other bit of visual feedback I've ever gotten from DvsM is just subjective, dismissible taste stuff, And there have been times I've made changes based on feedback, and they still bother me because I know I didn't need to make that change. Like I resent myself for having listened to the feedback, because I know that doesn't make it any better or worse. It's just different. And I shouldn't have gotten so caught up in the feedback. And again, your mileage may vary. I find visual feedback way more prone to just being taste bias. And I don't care about taste. I'm writing, you can't as an artist. You have to do what you think is right. I'm not trying to make bologna sandwiches. I'm trying to make a very specific sort of thing, and some people are going to be alienated by it. Some people aren't going to like black and white. Black and white is a perfect example. It's not been a lot, but I've gotten feedback of like, it would be really cool to see it in color. That's taste bias. That's useless feedback. Absolutely useless. There's nothing I can do with that or should do with that. I mean, I guess I could. It's like, oh, okay, and I could go and color it. That would be dopey. That would be stupid. There's no reason to do that. That's taste bias. Writing, I think, is less prone to taste bias. It can be. Some people like things really explicit. Some people like things more vague. Some people want to see more of the weird sci-fi, UFO conspiracy stuff. Some people want to see more this or more that or whatever. Like, you can still get weird feedback that's very individual that you can just move to the trash bin. But I think it's the odds that they're going to stumble someplace, that you need to be aware there's a stumbling block, are far greater with asking people to evaluate writing than with drawing. My impression. So no, I'm usually less, especially at this stage, less concerned about people looking over the art. And some of that, I think I'm just more confident as an artist than a writer. I think I'm a good writer. You know, I think I'm good. I think I can write. But I also think I've been drawing my whole life, and I know what works or doesn't work as a drawing. And so there is a little bit of whatever confidence / arrogance with the art where it's like, I don't need your help. You know, I know how to draw. I know what a good drawing looks like. I know this is fine. You know, there is an element of that. Doesn't mean I don't. There are panels I would absolutely go back and redo if I could, but you know, writing, I want some vetting. Let's see here. It's true. I think and obviously the reading of a script is completely different from the reading of a comic, but because of the way I write my scripts, again, sort of screenplay format, if you can't follow the script, something's wrong. Like, it should be, even though it's going to be different, it will read and feel different once it's drawn and you're doing page turns, and I'm emphasizing some panels with, you know, full page spreads and making other things small. It's going to be a completely different experience. But in terms of the story and the characters, like, if you're lost about like, who is this guy again, or what are they talking about, that's a problem. That's a problem I need to figure out. I need to understand what's derailing you, and I need to go back and make it an easier ride to be on, so to speak. Let's see here. Yeah, true. But this is also the challenge of who gets to read the script. You need someone, I think, who's at least a little bit of a visual thinker. Oh, I did the thing. Okay, that was weird. You need someone who's going to recognize that this is not going to be a novel. Like, there will be pictures to look at. And I try in my scripts to, even though I have a very clear picture in my head, I try to at least sketch out, it will look something like this, mostly for the benefit of future proofreaders. I don't need to describe what a particular dinosaur looks like in the script. Like, I know what dinosaur I'm doing, and I know what they look like. That's mostly for someone else who's reading, so they can, I'm not just dropping in a weird dinosaur name and they don't know what that means. Or if I'm describing, you know, there's a lot of things where I have a very clear picture in my head. I don't need to be writing this out, that someday someone's going to proofread this and they need to be able to kind of imagine what this will be. Let's see here. Yes, you do. And again, I'm not critical of anyone working live. It's just not my, I don't. I don't. And people know that if they've watched me. Like, I've to date, my entire time doing this indie comic thing on YouTube, I've done a single live draw with Dan Ikas, the great Dan Ikas, We did a fan art thing where I drew Spider-Man. That's the only time ever. I don't love it. Part of it is because I'm just a little... And maybe it's all the same thing. Maybe it's not part of it. I don't want anybody in the kitchen when I'm cooking either. Like, I don't want... You'll see it when it's done. I don't know why I'm that way. I think part of it is I'm very protective. This is something I've talked about, and it's never going to change. If it changes, I'll probably stop doing this. For me, it's all about protecting the integrity of my creative process. It has to be satisfying and enjoyable to me. And there is something about, well, I can do this, I can talk about it in a general way, or I can show you stuff after the fact or update you or whatever. But when it comes to the actual working on something, the actual writing, the actual drawing, whatever, I need a kind of purity. I need a kind of tunnel vision. I need to get in touch with a particular root in my brain. And if any part of me is, rather than on this kind of up here, thinking about someone's watching, someone's spectating, someone's reacting, someone's asking questions, someone's looking at what I'm doing and evaluating it, even though it's not done yet. Someone's, to go back to the other comparison, they're in the kitchen and they're like, why are you cutting the onion like that? Get the fuck out. Get the fuck out of here. Like, go have a drink. I'm doing something and I can't, you're pulling me out of it. I'm trying to do my thing. Not everybody's like that. And based on the not representative sample of creatives on YouTube, you would think everybody is the other way. I strongly believe that a lot of, if not most, creatives are more like me, where they don't, it's not just that they don't want an audience when they're in the act of creating, it actually is harmful to the process. And I've always been that way. Always. I remember in grade school, when you're the kid who draws, you get a lot of, like, that's now, like, that's your role in other people's stories. When they tell stories about their grade school experience, I'm sure I am Gary Hodges. He was the kid who draws. Like, that's the shorthand for people. When you're the kid who draws, it's fascinating for other kids. And I get it. I'm not blaming anybody, but they want to sit and watch you do it. So I'll be sitting there and drawing Darth Vader, or drawing a TIE fighter, or drawing Lion-O from Thundercats, or whatever I'm doing. Like, I'm drawing and there's someone over my shoulder watching me. And even at that young age, I fucking hated it. It made me a very private creative. It made me want to draw in my room alone. And I don't know why. And it's not something I've ever dug into, and I don't know if it even matters. Like, at this point, I'm 49 years old. Like, it's the way I work. So I don't know. But the only thing, I still remember in life drawing classes in college, I was fine because no one's looking at you. You're all looking at the model. So I could draw around a bunch of people. But, you know, the instructor kind of mills around, looks at what you're doing. Every time an instructor was over my shoulder watching me work, I just felt myself freeze up. It's like typing when somebody's watching, you know what I mean? Where you just, like, you start hitting, you're typing half the speed you normally do. You start hitting all these weird typos. I've been at work where people are like, can you pull up a map of this? And it's like the first time I've used Google Maps. What the hell is going on? That's just my, I don't know why, but that's how I am. Let's see here. I want people in the kitchen so they can get ideas to, probably help them. No, that's very good of you. I don't remember the branches. I was a religious studies minor, comparative religion. And so there was a whole semester just on Buddhism. I don't remember the names because it's been, 25 years, but there was it was talking about two kinds of enlightened people. Two kinds of people who have achieved nirvana, or at least have sort of touched it. They see it. It's right there. And I think the metaphor, the imagery was, there's this wall, this tall wall with a ladder going up it. And this is representing like the working toward enlightenment. And that there were two basic types of enlightened people. There were the people who get to the top and don't go over into enlightenment. They stay at the top and they help other people up the ladder. Okay. And then there are people who just go over and it's like, that's your own journey. You got to figure it out. I think you maybe fall into like, I'll help you up the ladder too. And I try to that's why a lot of why I do these videos is I try to provide some sort of, hopefully you can benefit from my experience content. But I think you're more maybe on that end of the spectrum. I think, like, for example, Josh might be more like that too, where you're seeing every little nut and bolt of his process. Or Scott Cirkland. Like, Scott is like, I feel like his whole brand is like, let me show you how to do this. And it's great and needed and so valuable. And I just know that there's something about that would disturb or disrupt my ability to do the work. I'm just not, I'm configured that way. I'm more of like, I know how to get where I'm going. I'm in the woods. I know how to get up to that mountain peak. I'm going. You go whichever way you think is best. I'll tell you the story about how I got there afterward. I'll give you a daily log of this is my trek through the forest. But like if you're with me asking me questions the whole way, it's going to be tough. I don't know. I'm not a perfect person. Yes. Okay. We got that one. Come back to help others. Yes, there's that too. I try to help in my modest way. The way it's funny, we've been talking. Oh, let's see here. I feel like in the age of AI, you need to show your work. Yeah, it is true. It is true. So this is where I think there's an interesting, all of us have talked at some point or another about whether we care about our relationship with process and process talk and process videos and all of that. And I shared a take in I think it was the Artcasters chat a few weeks ago or something, explaining that I have mixed feelings about process videos. When I see an experienced person doing a process video, like let's say, for example, Scott, I'm very interested. I get negative about process videos when they're aimed at younger and or less experienced creatives, because in my opinion, younger and or inexperienced creatives get lost in the weeds of which pen should I use, which paper should I buy, like what is the right way to draw a figure, what is, like, they get lost in these details that I think are completely unimportant. I really, in the big scheme of things, I think it shouldn't matter. What pen should you use? I don't know. Whatever fucking ballpoint you have on your tape. Doesn't matter. If you're getting lost in the details, it's like, I don't know. It's like, someone who thinks they want to take a yoga class and then they spend 2 weeks shopping for like cool yoga clothes. Like that's to me what I hear when I hear someone ask like what pen to use, what paper to use. Like you're getting ahead of yourself. It doesn't matter. And if you're that new to it, the pen or the paper or the software program or whatever is going to make 2% of difference. You know, you're asking questions that are going to matter when you're much farther down the path. An experienced person asking which software do you use makes sense. Someone who's just started, like I look, again, I'm not pontificating. I know that there's exceptions and yeah, but what if, but you know, some people it can be helpful or they really want to, but I get it. I personally think sometimes that stuff can do more harm than good. So that's another reason why, even if I was comfortable letting someone watch some time lapse of me drawing a page or something, I probably wouldn't do it, just because I think it shouldn't matter. I get that, believe me, I get over the years, there's some curiosity in like, what programs do you use and how do you do it and how do you start? And I'm not like, it's not like, oh, I'm not going to talk about it. But that's not where I want to spend my time. And I don't think it's as useful as other things. What kind of process videos do I think are useful? So something I also said in the Artcasters chat is I've gotten way more interested in talking about the creative mentality and the artist's lifestyle and things like that. That I think is important. And I think also, to get back to the age of AI, I'm not going to relitigate AI. I'm not going to share. Like, I think people, look, I meet very few real creatives who feel great about AI. Okay. I'll say that. That shouldn't even be a hot take. What I will say is, I think the creative experience, the creative journey, the act of making art is profoundly important and rewarding. And to me, perhaps the biggest indictment of AI, even after all the kind of dystopian, nightmarish potential it could met out, is you're denying yourself that journey. I really don't understand the fucking point of not making art and calling yourself an artist. I just don't get it. And you only like, we talk a lot about, oh, you know, it's stealing. I think, and not to be cutesy about it, but the biggest problem is you're robbing yourself of the experience. You're not having you're not being an artist. And I don't mean that in like the way we're normally hearing it. I mean, like, you're not having the experience of being an artist. And that's the best part. It's by far the best part. I've said this a million times and I stand by it. The peak experience of making these comics for me is when the proof shows up and I get to look at it for the first time, and it represents this grinding, cumulative, patient, sometimes painful, sometimes extremely rewarding effort that I put into it for sometimes years. That's the peak. Everything after that, people seeing it, people buying it, people asking me questions about it, I'm sorry, I appreciate all of that, but it's way below the feeling I get of the accomplishment. And you're not getting that. That's what I would like to try. Like, some people should be showing their process. And I think that's important in the terms of like showing why AI, you know, illustrating the difference between that and AI art. I want to talk about the experience of it. I want to talk about how rewarding it is. I want to talk about how fun it is and challenging it is and how it's the most interesting thing I think I've done with my life, which is a crazy thing to say. I've never actually said that out loud before, but I don't know if it's untrue. I would have to think about it. It's made my life richer. Typing in prompts is not doing that. I get that sometimes it looks cool. I get that sometimes it's sort of interesting. I get that you get to pretend, you know, you're an artist or whatever the thing is. But you're not having the fun experience. And I want to be evangelical about the experience of being an artist. And that's what you're robbing yourself of with this. That's why I'm not interested. That's why I, you know, we'll leave it at that. But anyway, I think it'll be very, 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 very important for creatives going forward, where now, like, they've peed in the pool. Every piece of art you look at online, you have to wonder, is this legitimate? It's a fucking tragedy. It's terrible. Like, even if we could get the genie back in the bottle, now it's just fucked up. Okay. So I think it is important, and this is something I've been talking about ever since the beginning of this AI stuff. Art is not just a product, it's a process. 100%. Like, and the problem is the lack of our art literacy, generally, culturally, not appreciating that distinction, not appreciating that it's not just about this end result. It's about the journey to get, the individual's journey to get there, and what they're saying and how it's been informed by their life experiences and blah, 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 blah. All the things that make art great, okay? Some of demonstrating that is going to be the process, is going to be the actual mechanics of it, okay? I think some of it is going to be talking more like the Rick Rubin sort of thing, which, as you know, like, I'm sort of enamored with. Talking about the experience, the lifestyle, the creative act, and the human relevance it has. It's something that's, I think, often lost in this conversation. What you're missing out on if you take too many shortcuts. Okay. Let's see here. Yes. Yeah. This kind of process, obviously, I'm very comfortable with. I think it's during the live act of it. I don't know. There's something about that I'm squeamish about. Depends on where you are in your journey, Gary. The details. Yeah, I know. I was the same. I got it. I remember buying, like, how to draw books. Like, which pencils do I want? Do I want 2B or 3B? And now looking back, I realized, like, that's, none of that made me a better artist, being preoccupied with that. What made me a better artist was just doing it. And I have to say, once I kind of realized that, some of the best drawings I have in my traditional art portfolio are just with a ballpoint Bic. And that's also why I have a dim view of, like, which marker do you use, which pen do you use, whatever. Again, depending on your level. If my nephew, who's going to be 7, came to me and said, which pens should I buy? That's where it's like, what pens do you have? Doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. Draw. Start drawing. Once you get comfortable making stuff, then we can talk about the extra 5% difference using this pen versus this pen, or this grain paper versus this grain paper. Like, I think it's way more valuable. In fact, it might even be more valuable for you to pick the wrong paper, or pick the wrong pen, or, you know, whatever, and fumble with it. That's going to teach you a lot more than me just setting you on the roller coaster, like the mine cart, and, like, you're going, like, use a 2B pencil, you want this kind of tooth on your paper, look for this pound, like, blah, blah, blah. Figure it out. And this is back to cooking analogies. This is the same way I am now with cooking. Like, when it's like, well, how long should I fry it? Until it's done. I'm not going to give you a time. Like, you figure it out. Like, you start to learn through experience. And if you blow it, that's way more valuable than me telling you, like, operate in these guidelines. Just my 2 cents. Okay. Right. They don't. I would argue, and again, this is just my personal take, that's therefore an opportunity for someone who is experienced to say, that's a dead end. Don't worry about that. You're not at that level. It doesn't matter. Like, concentrate on this for now. We'll circle back to tools later. Yeah, depends who you're talking to. 100%. It'd be different. Like if a 20-year-old came to me and said, "Hey, I've been reading DvsM and I'm kind of curious how you're achieving this or what you're doing," I would be way more open to that conversation. Someone who like has a portfolio, who's been drawing, who's been, you know, like messing with stuff and is curious, like, how are you doing this? And that's, again, what I enjoy. Like, I really enjoy to see how Scott makes a wax pack. Like, that's fascinating to me. Or, you know, I like to see, like, how is Josh approaching his layers and his shading and everything. And it's like, I'm curious because I've been doing it, and it's kind of interesting to see all the different ways to skin a cat. But usually what I'm thinking about, and I'm more oriented towards talking to younger people because I've done a little bit of speaking to kids about being a professional artist. And like, when I say kids, like junior high, high school, like that kind of level. And that's a level where I think they can, again, just my take, you can get lost in trying to make conditions perfect before you work. We see that with lots of creatives, lots and lots of creatives where, I mean, you hear it all the time. I'm going to start my book, or I'm going to start drawing once I get my home office set up, once the busy time at work lightens up, once I this, once I that, I need to get this software first, because what's the point before I do that? I really kind of, you know, once the kids go off to school, whatever the thing is, like, that to me is a damaging, you're doomed. You're never going to start. You need to, waiting for perfect conditions is a bad approach to being productive. And I get a whiff of perfect conditions when I hear people getting lost in the weeds of what software, what pen, what paper, what pencil, how do you hold it? I'm hearing a lot of perseverating and not a lot of doing work. Just me. Yeah, I think, well, look, it takes all types. Let's see here. Everyone using AI wants to be an artist. It's true. Some of them want to not pay an artist. Yes, it's true. Yeah. No, I don't think everyone. I think I mean, I wouldn't speculate on what percent, but they exist. They exist. I mean, there's more and more examples of people passing off work as their own that was AI generated. And to me, you know, everyone's going to react differently to that, and that's fine. To me, that's like a security guard who tells people he's a cop. Like, it's a weird stolen valor. Like, I just have a very dim view, and I can't think of I'm really trying. I can't think of a forgivable reason to do that. I don't object, for example, to, you know, and you see this a lot on social media, people like, I typed in these prompts and it looked pretty cool. Like, that doesn't get me upset. It also doesn't get me upset when you see like one that's been floating around as if Star Wars had been made in the 50s, and it's a bunch of like weird video clips of making Star Wars look like a 50s B sci-fi movie. Like, yeah, fine, you know, it's not super interesting to me, but it doesn't rankle me. if that's the right use of the word. But when you do see people, you know, claiming they made something and being a little slippery about the fact that it's AI, or not even slippery, they're just denying it and it's plain as day, or it comes out or whatever. I just don't get the point. Why are we doing this? Why are you doing this? What are you trying to achieve? Sometimes you see this messaging, and this is the last. I did not want to make my first video back to be like an AI video, but I do periodically see this weird sentiment, which I characterize as a weird sentiment of that somehow there was some gatekeeping with art before, and now that's been eliminated, and we've democratized art. And that to me just, you know, for people who are fans of this, like you see it, it bubbles up in the conversation about it from time to time. And that makes no sense to me at all. Eliminating the need to care enough about doing the work, to care enough about learning the craft, to care enough about developing a sense of taste, to articulating a voice or a vision or a style, to start something, to see it through, to finish it, to say something. Like, eliminating that need is not democratization. It's outsourcing. You're outsourcing it. And something I've said from the very beginning with this, like I said, I just did some freelancing a few months ago. Every AI artist I see, it would be like if this guy I did the beer labels for posted them and said, look at these new beer labels I made. Because he had the idea and he gave me the prompts. He told me what he wanted and I spat it out. And like now he's like, I'm a graphic designer now. I don't see how there's no meaningful difference to me. So it's not that like, oh, sometimes it doesn't look like, it's not that it doesn't look cool sometimes. It's not that, you know, it's, oh, just top to bottom an evil, corrupt process. And, you know, I'm just opposed to it fundamentally and any kind of use of it or whatever. Like I actually don't feel that strongly about the AI art topic. It really, where the rubber meets the road, to me, it's just sort of sad because I am evangelical about the experience of being an artist. And I do see people using this to say, like, I'm making art now. And again, it's this confusion between process and product. You're making a product, sort of. You're not even really making it, but you're contributing, you're directing a product. You've completely removed the best part of it. You've completely removed, in my opinion, the only reason to do it, the only reason to make art. I mean, is to have that experience of making something. And what's sad to me is like, you don't even know what you're missing out on. I think you should, I've said it before, I would much rather see the worst art I've ever seen in my life than someone's AI art. Like it's, but I think some of that is the motivation is there's a skill gap, and they just want to advance directly to Go. They want to put out stuff that's exactly like the thing in their head, or at least as close as possible, and they're unable to do that themselves. And they're frustrated with that or unhappy with that or whatever. And to me, like, you know, look, to me, it's like cry me a river. That's the experience of being an artist. Let me tell you something. If I only put out stuff that exactly matched the vision in the perfect eternal sunshine vision in my head of what this thing was going to be, I would never get anything out the door. Again, you're missing that experience too. It's too long didn't read. I completely find it unrelatable. The motivation to do it, the interest in it. And that's honestly may sound like a judgment, not even a judgment. I just can't. I remember saying this the first time I started seeing this AI image generator stuff. My overwhelming reaction to it is boredom. I'm not triggered. I'm not angry. I'm not scared. I'm not, offended or whatever. The number one feeling is like, if I see like the latest Taylor Swift news, like I don't give a shit. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Like I just don't care. This isn't for me. I don't know who it is for. I don't want it in my feed. That's the overwhelming sentiment I have. Okay. Okay. So now I'm going to move off of AI, even if there are more comments about it, just because that's enough. Let's see here. Oh, wait, it sent me an example on IG. I'm going to look at it right now. Looks like a collage book. Yeah, I think collage is different. I know I probably myself have compared, gosh, I'm getting sucked back into it. I myself have probably compared AI to like a collage, an automated collage machine. And I don't think that's fair. Collage is an art form in and of itself. It's a legitimate art form. Like, is it fumetti? Like, Terry Gilliam used to do his animation where he would just go through magazines and cut out things and animate them together. But that's a legitimate art form. I do see AI as different. And we're going to talk for 30 more minutes about this if I get into why I see AI as different from that. I get the comparison. And I can imagine there are some people who would just lump that all together. I'm not a Luddite about creating art. Like I use digital tools, and I'm not sitting and mixing tempera paint or stretching my own canvas or using a big feather quill pen. Like it's not like I'm, oh no. It all has to have human fingerprints all over every stage of the process. I do think there's a point. I think an analogy I was hearing once is, look, if I have half a glass of orange juice, that's orange juice. If I add like a tablespoon of water to it, it's still orange juice. If I add another tablespoon of water, it's probably still orange juice. At some point, though, it's not orange juice anymore. At some point, it's like water with a little bit of orange juice dropped in it. But it's not, we can't call it orange juice anymore. And I think when it comes to art, there is something like that. There is a point where you've offloaded too many choices. I think that's the key. It's not so much what tools are you using. It's like when you look at a work, how many of the specific details were chosen by the creator as opposed to provided, for lack of a better term. I don't know. I'm coming up with this distinction off the top of my head. I think there's a point where you're not actually an artist anymore. And I would never want to sit and debate where that line is. But again, the analogy I keep going back to that I think is pretty solid is, to me, there's no meaningful difference, none, between typing in prompts and hiring someone to make something. Like, neither one makes you an artist, but for some reason, the prompt people, some portion of them thinks that does make them some sort of an art director or some sort of creative. And I don't understand what the difference is. Like, you're having something or someone in the case of like when you hire me to make something for you, or something is when you're typing in prompts, make decisions for you. How does that make you a creative? You came up with an idea, sure. Ideas are cheap. We all have ideas. The difference, I think, between creatives and non-creatives are the people who, are creating something, making it, don't just have the idea for the great American novel, write it. Don't just have an idea for a comic, write it and draw it. Don't just have an idea for a movie, write the screenplay or whatever, like that's the difference. Ideas, everybody has ideas. I don't. Okay, now I'm going to try and stop. God, what am I doing? I apologize. Yeah, I mean, look, as long as you're open about it. I still think you're missing out on the experience of making something, but it's the fraudulence of some of that movement that's really disgusting to me. And this weird kind of now this is I want to be very clear, less common. But sometimes there's this weird venomousness of there was this exclusive club of artists that didn't let us in, these gatekeepers, and now we're in and they're upset about it. I just remember that I really have to roll my eyes at, because I can tell you, having been an artist my whole life, we were never the cool kids. Like, I don't know where you grew up, where it's sort of like the cool kids aren't letting me into the clubhouse. What cool kids? We were the biggest nerds and losers and introverts and weirdos that we knew. It's part of what kind of helped us, form a little group, was like we couldn't relate to anybody else. Oh, the cool kids. Jesus Christ. What high school did you go to? I was not the cool kid. I've never been the cool kid. Get the fuck out of here. Like, what are you talking about? Cool kids didn't let me in. I thought the cool kids were going to prom. Okay. I mean, I wouldn't. I don't feel strongly about that as AI, but I wouldn't. But see, it's different. I'm like, I don't know where I would use clip art. If we're talking about my comics, like that's my work. Like, why wouldn't I just make it myself? And if we're talking about my freelance stuff, they're paying me. Like, I don't even know, I feel like I'm obligated to make it myself rather than sell them something that somebody else made. So I don't really see, like, I don't use it. So I haven't really thought about, well, what would be an application for clip art? Now, that said, I have, for example, I've purchased fonts to use for something. That's probably not meaningfully different from clip art. I don't know. But otherwise, yeah, I don't know. It's just not the kind of work I do to call for clip art. It doesn't provide a utility to me. They are on they're on their way to not being artists. No, look, again, I see friends of mine on, like, for example, Facebook, more so when this stuff first came out, that were just having fun typing in weird prompts just to see what they would get. I don't, that's fine. I don't have an opinion about that. I think where I get annoyed is when I see someone who's using an image generator saying, like, or even suggesting that somehow we're the same. And we're not. We're not. And I'm not saying better or worse. I'm just saying it's different. Whatever you're doing is not what I'm doing. I don't know what you're doing. I think you're commissioning a robot to do commissions for you. Like, I don't know. I don't know what that is. They want RTUs. Yeah. I don't know for what, but yes, I understand. Yeah. My complaint is the ones who see this as somehow making art. I mean, again, people can use it for other things, and I don't really feel strongly about it. I do have objections to the companies themselves. I mean, I think there's a lot of ethical concern there. They built these models, off of the work of artists who never intended for their art to be used in that way, which, whether it's legal or not, like, I think it's just ethically questionable. But yes, that's me. You know what? I guess I am, in one small sense. I do see a distinction between people who are doing it and people who aren't. And let's even just set the AI thing aside. Like, let's roll the clock back, whatever it is, a year or something, and there's no AI. The difference between people who talk about doing something, talk about work, and actually are doing it. Like, I do see, and I wouldn't call it a gatekeeper, but I think any artist has met this person. I've been this person, to be fair. I think we all have at some stage of our journey someone who talks a lot about an idea they have, and they've got nothing, like, that's the stage it's stuck at, is talking about it. I've been that guy. I've known that guy. I've met that guy or girl, whatever, like, there's lots of them out there. And like I said, I think it is actually a stage of the evolution of a creative. Like, if we're looking at, like, the monkeys slowly turning into a person, there is a stage of creative that is a lot of ideas and a lot of talking about it, and maybe a bunch of notes, maybe a bunch of world building, whatever the thing is, but nothing is happening. There's no work being created. Okay. I wouldn't say, I don't love, the gatekeeping thing. I always kind of say it with a little bit of an eye roll, where I've never loved that term, but I do think those are two very distinct groups. The people who actually make things and the people who talk about making things. And with no judgment, again, because I've been there. I was that guy too. We've all been that person, I think, somewhere along the way. I'm at a point now where it's hard for me to relate to that person. I don't really have much, I'm not in that tribe anymore. And there's no derision, there's no negative feelings, but overwhelmingly the only reaction I have to that is, like, I really would encourage you to start making things, and join me in my tribe. I just, so it's, and I would be irritated, a little bit like the AI thing, if someone like that, if they had, like, a spiral notebook full of ideas and they said, I'm a comic creator, and they had nothing to show for it, I would say, I wouldn't say this because I'm not an asshole, but I would be thinking, I'm a comic creator. You're somewhere just shy of that. Like, until you've actually, started doing it, you don't even have to finish, though I think finishing is its own kind of little club. Like, you need, like, actually to be working, like, actually to be trying to make something, not just thinking about doing it, not just planning to plan, or whatever the, you would call that experience. I'm a little, I don't have, again, I'm not nasty about it, but I feel it's important, and it was important for me to recognize this is not the same. I had to get to a point where I recognized me talking about writing, or talking about, or having ideas, or thinking like someday I'm going to sit and me thinking like I have an idea for a screenplay. I had to get to a point where I realized that does not make me a screenwriter. I am not a screenwriter, but I know there was an earlier part of my life where I was like, yeah, I'm writing a novel. You have ideas for a novel. How many pages have you written? Where are you at with it? Like, I think it's important to be realistic about what are you actually doing and how are you labeling yourself, which ties into why sometimes I, get a little prickly when it comes to the AI thing, because I see a lot of people labeling themselves in a way that I don't think is fair. Let's see here. No, I mean, it depends what we're doing in Photoshop. Right now with stuff like there's a lot of integrated AI stuff into Adobe products, which again, I can't. How intentional is any of this? How many creative choices are you making? How much are you just basically like Photoshop is turning into the thing that we used to laugh about. There is this idea out there, I think, among non-creatives that if you're using photo, like you still see it. Like you mention that you use a digital tool of some kind, and you'll see somebody somewhere if the conversation is long enough. It's kind of like monkeys with typewriters. Eventually, you'll get Shakespeare. If the chat goes on long enough, somebody somewhere will be like, "Well, isn't that cheating?" Because we used to joke. They have this idea in their head that, I go into Photoshop and I find a drop down that says, draw a dinosaur, and I click it and it does the thing like that. But now it's actually becoming that. And I think, I don't know, to me, that is sort of cheating. Everyone's going to draw the line someplace else. And I know there are purists out there who are like, even digital is, for a long time, digital was people had a dim view of it. But again, we're debating where the line is. Even people who work traditionally and have like a weird snooty attitude about digital, they're not mixing their own paints. They're going and buying they're not making their own brushes. They're not stretching their own canvas. Like they're using cheats like rulers. I mean, it's silly. Like you're just deciding where are we drawing the line, and I get that, and that's that's going to be the debate. And some people are going to find different people like it's like, well, I think that's too far in one direction or the other. What I think is that most creatives, it's been interesting because I think most creatives can agree. Like there is some point. Remember the orange juice analogy. At some point, it's not orange juice anymore. I think we can all agree at some point you're not doing anything anymore, or you're not doing anything meaningful. So, I mean, it's shy of that. There's going to be a lot of discussion, but there is some point where I think increasingly you get to like 70%, 80%, 90%, 98% of creatives will say like, well, that doesn't count. That's too much in that direction. And again, I just keep going back to the analogy of what is the difference between typing in prompts or hiring someone like me to make something for you? Let's see here. People say I'm on my way for. Yeah, I would, I don't feel good about that either. It's why I shoot all my own reference. Create all my own reference. It's why I enlist friends to pose for me, because I don't want to, and that's reference. You're not even seeing the original. But to me, it's, so anyway. Wow. Turned into a big AI thing. 2 hours, 3 people watching. I'll have to update the title to like AI thoughts. Didn't expect that. What else? Is there anything else I wanted to cover today? Oh, okay. So future streaming schedule. I'm not going to do weekly like I did in the 79 process. It's just, it feels like too much of a burden, and I'm not confident in my ability to come up with something interesting or worth sharing or worth talking about every week. Like, I feel like, you know, every other week is a better pace, and no one needs to see too much of me. I'm not that interesting. So next, let's look at the calendar. The next stream will probably be May 11th or 12th, that weekend. Hopefully, here's where I set an intention for myself. Hopefully, next time we talk, I will be at least one revision into my script, maybe two, and I will have already gutted a lot of it. Because I think I expect that's how it's going to work. I think the first time I go through, I'll see easy cuts. Chop, 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 and I'll see the biggest drop I'm ever going to see in one round of revisions. And then after that, it'll be few. So hypothetically, like right now, it's about 40 pages. Maybe my first pass, I'll end up with 35. And then the next pass, I'll end up with 32. And then the next pass, I'll end up with 30. You know what I mean? Like, I think it'll get harder and harder. And there'll be some wavering where, like, I'll chop something, but then I'll see a part that it's like, I don't know if this is clear and I want to massage this a little bit, and then I end up adding a line or two. So there'll be a little, you know, push-pull in the terms of the length. But I think that first pass is going to be where I'm reading it and it's like, don't need this, don't want this, this doesn't work, this just adds length, etc. I'm going to do it old school in the sense that I'm going to print it. Well, I do the writing digitally. I did a little bit of handwriting this time, and I try to at least a little bit for every script I do. But I don't feel strongly about it. But revisions, I like, and because revisions are less, writing is like a intense tunnel vision, like you need to get into a place and you're in this mode. Revising I can do a little more loosely, as in I can print out the script and take it to a coffee shop or take it to a library and go through with a red pen and make a bunch of notes. Like, I can do that without my full attention on it, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to, after a few months of sitting in this chair writing the script, of like taking it on the road and messing around with it and rearranging and shaping and getting it as good as it can be, which is always the challenge. Another thing, next time you see me, I will have normal length hair. I'm finally giving up what was originally my COVID hair, and then I just got sort of attached to and maintained. I just kind of got sick of tying it up all the time. Like, and there's nothing you can do with it. Like, there's two things. I can leave it down like a roadie, or I can tie it up like this in a ponytail, and that is it. Those are all my options. And, you know, I do have a job where it's not often, but sometimes I need to get on the stand and testify in court. Sometimes I need to meet with expert witnesses or whatever, you know, like there's just things where, and I am not a traditionalist. I'm not hung up on this thing of like, oh, you need short hair to look a certain way, blah, 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 blah. But there's a little bit of that. And look, I'm a visual arts guy. I know that people get impressions visually. I don't want that to be a factor if I'm talking to a jury, of them looking at my long hair and coming to weird conclusions because of that. Like, I want to be sort of a little more neutral in my appearance. Anyway, that's one of the many reasons why I'm finally giving it up. It'll come back someday. I've always had dreams of being retired with gray hair, long gray hair, a little bit like Michael Caine in Children of Men. That was sort of my ambition for retirement. I think that's it. Probably will have people on from time to time as last time. I think the format's going to be very similar to how it was before. Sometimes I'll just be on just talking about whatever's going on. If I don't really have a lot to talk about, maybe I'll try to see if somebody wants to come on. Lacking all those things, maybe I'll just skip that week. I'm not going to be, again, this should not be an obligation for me. This should be just a sort of a fun thing to do. So keeping it light, keeping it easy, keeping people in the loop of how we're going. Creative retreat coming up in August. That's a big milestone. That's going to be good. Talk more about DvsM 2001 for the next probably year and a half. Again, I'm not going to get stuck on dates, but my goal has always been to get a DvsM out every other year. So as long as I start drawing DvsM 2001 this year sometime, it's very achievable for me to get it out next year, which is on schedule because I had 79 come out last year, and I want to kind of do that for the remaining 3, this one and the 2 following. There we are. Good to see everyone. Thank you for everyone in the chat. Thank you for the energetic conversation about AI, even though I did not expect that. Let's see if it's possible for me to never talk about AI again on this channel. Because again, overwhelmingly, it's like bored. I just don't, it's for somebody else to do and for somebody else to consume. I just really don't care. You know who loves to talk about AI, loves it, is Corey Kerr. You should seek out Corey Kerr. You should send him examples of work you've done in AI. You should talk about how great it is and how it's going to change the world for the better. You should also fold in some kind of conversation about how social media has made us all a little more enlightened and healthy and thoughtful human beings. It's the next stage of human evolution. Let me know how that goes after you do that. All right, guys. Talk to you next time.